All right, IED. Today we're going to start activity 2.1.3, putting it together, and we'll be taking a selfie stick and we'll be assembling a selfie stick in Onshape in order to show that we know how to put things together in an assembly on CAD drawings and CAD modeling. So the first thing that we probably need to do is kind of go over the materials that we're going to be having. There is a Fusion 360 selfie stick design file. I'm going to be having that selfie stick design on Onshape and available to you guys in a link in that video. So pay attention to that one. If you guys use Fusion 360, there's this design file. If you use Inventor, there's these selfie stick parts. This curriculum was made before the COVID pandemic, so the whole like, hey, let's just use the Onshape to be able to do this is like, well, we didn't think that one through very far. So I'm going to have that available to you guys as well. But in later years, you can actually use Inventor and Fusion 360 as well. There's also the McMaster Car Supply Company catalog, which they're going to make us look up a screw and download it and actually find it. And there's also a selfie stick assembly. I think that's a CAD file or a drawing file, if I remember correctly. Anyway, so we're going to be actually taking individual parts and we're going to be snapping those parts together in CAD software. So let's talk about the different degrees of freedom first, because if you're going to make something snap into place, what you're going to be doing is you're taking the degrees of freedom away from that object. So two things that are attached together lose degrees of freedom because they just can't move around in all of the ways that objects can move around. So I'm going to go ahead and give you guys a couple of examples. There are 6 degrees of freedom that we have available to us. 3 of these degrees of freedom are translational, and they go along our traditional X, Y, and Z axis. These things that your math teachers tell you about, and we promptly try to forget them because we think that they're not important. These types of motions are translational motion, so you can move along the X direction, you can move along the Y direction, and you can also move along the Z direction as well too. So you can move up and down, you can move left and right, and you can move forwards and backwards. All of those are degrees of freedom, and there are 3 degrees of freedom here. Okay, the other type of degrees of freedom are rotational degrees of freedom, and the rotational degrees of freedom also can be done individually or together. So 1 degree of freedom is to rotate in the X direction, and one of them is to rotate in the Y direction, and the other one is to rotate in the Z direction. So, and by the Z direction, you can kind of see how I'm taking this blue ring and like moving it around this way. Okay, the Z direction, whenever I say that, it rotates around the Z axis. So you can rotate around the X axis, and that creates Y rotation. You can rotate around the Y axis, and that creates, let's see what this would be. This would be a Z rotation. And you can rotate around the Z-axis, and this creates X rotation. So it's kind of weird how that actually works out, but there are 6 degrees of freedom. There are 3 translational, and there are 3 rotational. Okay, the 3 rotational ones are normally called roll, pitch, and yaw. And the roll, pitch, and yaw is depending on the actual object that you're dealing with. So the pitch is normally the up and down direction. So try to think like an airplane. Whenever you pitch up or you pitch down, that's the airplane rolling up or down. Okay, I should say rotating up or down. The roll is it kind of rotating to the left and to the right. So if it was an airplane, you can think, is it rotating to the left or is it rotating to the right? And then the yaw is the z-axis rotation. And generally speaking, you really don't want your airplane to yaw like by itself. You don't want to be midair and just be like, all right, we're going to yaw 15 degrees. That's not a good idea. Airplanes normally turn by rolling, and then they create different pressures, and that creates the turn, not actually yawing itself. So those are the 3 different degrees of freedom the 6 different degrees of freedom that we're going to be doing. There's also a video available. You guys can watch that video as well too. It's the same thing. And then in the next video, we're going to be talking about how to take our selfie stick and assembling our selfie stick. So you guys have a great day, and I'll talk at you later.